Get him off this plane before he scares the cabin.
Claudia Bellamy said it from the first row, her cream handbag planted in seat 1C, exactly where Darius Whitmore was supposed to sit. Darius held up his boarding pass.
I paid for 1C.
The system was checked twice, and the truth stayed the same. Darius had the seat, Claudia did not.
Sir,
but within
I'm gonna
minutes,
need
the
you to
calm
come
black
with us.
passenger
Now.
became the problem.
We can
The
do this
word
quietly,
security
or we can
entered
make
the
it
aisle.
difficult.
Phones
Your
started
choice.
rising. Darius did not shout. He only unlocked his phone and said,
Then let's put the truth on record.
5 minutes later, MapleGate Flight 417 was still at the gate, and the board waiting in Toronto started asking what happened in seat 1C. This row isn't for people who wander into signature class. Claudia Bellamy said it without raising her voice, which somehow made it worse. The words slipped through the warm cabin air and settled over the first row like frost. Darius Whitmore stood in the aisle of MapleGate Flight 417, one hand resting on the worn handle of his carry-on, the other holding a boarding pass he had checked twice before stepping onto the aircraft. Outside the oval windows, Calgary sat under a pale Canadian morning, the runway shining with thin ice and reflected light. Inside, signature class looked untouched by weather. Cream leather seats, folded blankets, soft light, and the kind of calm people paid extra not to lose. Darius had paid for that calm. Seat 1C, Calgary to Toronto. Booked 16 days ago. Confirmed, paid in full. He wore a charcoal overcoat, old polished shoes, and carried a brown laptop case with scuffed corners. No gold watch, no assistant, just a man trying to reach Toronto before a boardroom decided the next year of his company's life. Claudia Bellamy did not see that. She saw a black man standing beside the first row and built a story before he opened his mouth. She stood beside the first row, one hand resting near the armrest, her ivory coat neat over one arm, a pale blue silk scarf tucked at her throat. Her cream handbag sat in seat 1C like a small, expensive guard dog. Darius looked at the seat marker, then at his pass. "Excuse me, Mom," he said. His voice was even, almost tired. "I believe this is my seat." Claudia's eyes moved slowly from his shoes to his face. Not curious, measuring. Her mouth tightened at one corner before she glanced toward the front galley, as if the correct answer might come from someone in uniform instead of the paper in his hand. "I don't think so," she said. "I always sit in the first row on this route." A man across the aisle paused with his coffee halfway to his mouth. A woman behind Claudia stopped adjusting her earbuds. Boarding noise thinned, not fully silent yet, but thinner. People could sense the first crack before they knew what had broken. Darius held out the boarding pass. Seat 1C, signature class. Claudia did not take it. She leaned back an inch as if the pass carried something unpleasant. "Maybe there's been a mix-up. These apps confuse people." "There's no mix-up," Darius said. "This is 1C. Claudia gave a small laugh, dry and polished. "I fly MapleGate twice a month. The crew knows where I sit." It was not an answer. It was a claim of ownership dressed as habit. Darius had heard that tone before in hotel lounges, investor rooms, and airport priority lanes. The words changed, but the question underneath never did. "How did you get here?" He kept his shoulders relaxed. Anger would have helped her. Anger would have given the cabin something easy to understand. So he gave her nothing but the truth. "Your bag is in my seat," he said. Claudia's fingers tightened around the edge of her scarf. For the first time, irritation moved openly across her face. She lifted her phone from her hand and tilted the screen away from him too late. Darius saw only a flash, 2D, still signature class, still a quiet flight across the country, just not the seat she had decided belonged to her. Claudia saw him see it. A small fracture opened in her composure, then closed again under pride. "Seat 2D is not what I requested," she said. "That's between you and the airline," Darius replied. "Seat 1C is between me and this boarding pass." Behind him, the boarding line slowed. A suitcase wheel squeaked and stopped. Somewhere near row 3, someone exhaled too loudly. Claudia glanced at the watching faces, then back at Darius. Her expression softened in a practiced way, not with kindness, but performance. "You're making this uncomfortable," she said. "No," Darius answered. "I'm asking to sit down." His phone buzzed inside his coat. He ignored it once. It buzzed again. He took it out, glanced down, and saw Maya Laurent's name above the preview. Toronto board moved to 1:30. MapleGate executives want your final answer today. Darius locked the screen before anyone could read the rest. He slid the phone back into his pocket with the same slow care he used for everything that morning. Claudia watched the movement and misunderstood it as nerves, certain the cabin, the crew, and the language of loyalty would bend her way again. Darius looked at the cream handbag, then at Claudia. "Please move your bag." Claudia Bellamy thought she was moving an ordinary passenger. She had no idea she had just challenged the man MapleGate needed most. Nora Keene saw the cream handbag before she saw the boarding pass. That was the first problem. She stepped out from the forward galley with the practiced smile of a woman who had spent 10 years learning how to make trouble sound like a misunderstanding. Her navy MapleGate uniform was pressed flat at the shoulders. Her hair was pinned so tightly it pulled the softness from her face. At 32, Nora had already learned the private weather of airplanes, especially the premium guest who expected the world to move around them. She saw Claudia Bellamy in the ivory coat, polished, tense, offended. Then she saw Darius Whitmore standing in the aisle with a worn carry-on and a boarding pass in his hand. In less than a second, before she asked one fair question, Nora chose the shape of the story. Claudia looked like loyalty. Darius looked like delay. "Is everything all right here, Mrs. Bellamy?" Nora asked. Her voice softened around the name. Claudia turned toward her with the relief of a woman seeing the system arrive on her behalf. "No, Nora, it isn't. This man is pressuring me over my seat. I've told him there must be a mistake, but he won't let it go." Darius watched Nora's eyes flick toward him, then back to Claudia, as if balance itself required his patience and Claudia's comfort. "That is not what happened," he said, calm flat. Clear enough to make the nearby passengers listen harder. Nora kept smiling, but the corners of her mouth began to strain. "Sir, may I see your boarding pass?" Darius handed it to her. Of course. She scanned it with the small device in her hand. A blue light blinked. Her screen refreshed. Darius Whitmore, Seat 1C, Signature Class. Calgary to Toronto. She hesitated. Not long. Long enough. Darius saw it. Claudia saw it too, and something cold moved behind her eyes. Nora then asked Claudia for her pass. Claudia made a soft, annoyed sound, unlocked her phone and held it out like a favor being granted. Nora looked down. Claudia Bellamy. Seat 2D, Signature Class. The truth stood between them in bright letters. No room for tone, no room for interpretation. One passenger had the seat. One passenger wanted it. Nora felt heat creep up the back of her neck. The right thing would have taken 5 seconds. "Mrs. Bellamy, your assigned seat is 2D. Please move your bag." But Nora thought of delay codes, complaint files, her supervisor's cold emails, the way premium travelers knew which words made managers nervous. She thought of how Claudia had used her name, as if familiarity were a handle. Nora turned to Darius. "Mr. Whitmore, we do have another comfortable seat available for you." The cabin seemed to lower its breathing. In row 3, Ethan Reed looked up from his phone, his thumb frozen over the screen. Darius did not move. "Why would I need another seat when I already have this one?" Nora swallowed. Claudia's posture sharpened. The question was simple, and simple questions were dangerous because they gave people fewer places to hide. "Sir," Nora said, keeping her voice low, "we're trying to keep boarding smooth for everyone." "Everyone," Darius repeated, not as an accusation but as a test. Claudia let out a brittle laugh. "This is exactly what I mean. He's turning a small seating issue into a scene. People have connections to make, meetings to attend. We can't hold up an entire flight because one person needs to prove a point." Darius looked at her handbag still resting in his seat. "The point was printed before I boarded." A murmur passed through the first rows, soft enough to deny later, loud enough to change the room. Nora felt control slipping from her fingers. She leaned closer to Darius and lowered her voice. "I can move you to 2D and add 18,000 MapleGate points to your account for the inconvenience." The offer landed badly. Even Nora seemed to hear it after she said it. Compensation meant inconvenience. Inconvenience meant he had been asked to give up something that was his. Claudia's mouth curved faintly, already mistaking the offer for victory. Darius looked at Nora for a long second. His face did not harden. It settled. "If you make that offer," he said, "then please write the reason clearly. Nora blinked. "Excuse me? Write that I am being asked to leave my confirmed seat because another passenger prefers it." The aisle went still. Nora's fingers tightened around the scanner. Claudia's smile disappeared. "That's not necessary," Nora said. "It is," Darius answered. "If the request is fair, the words should be easy." Nora looked down at her tablet, then at Claudia, then at the seat number above the row. The truth had not changed. Only her courage had failed to catch up with it. Nora wanted the aisle clear. Claudia wanted the seat. Darius wanted one simple thing: for truth to matter before status. Claudia Bellamy did not need to shout. People like her rarely did. She had learned long ago that certain sentences sounded harmless if spoken with a soft mouth and a steady chin. "Maybe the booking app confused you," she said, smoothing one sleeve of her ivory coat as if the problem were a wrinkle, not a man standing with proof in his hand. Signature class has different rules. Some people don't understand how premium cabins work. Each sentence arrived dressed in politeness, clean enough for a complaint report, sharp enough to leave a mark. Darius Whitmore heard every layer beneath it. He heard what Claudia would never put into words. He heard the old question hiding behind the new language. "Are you sure you belong here?" Not angry yet, not surprised, just tired in that deep, private place where memory keeps receipts. He had heard versions of it in hotel lounges when a clerk asked twice for his room number. In downtown restaurants when hosts assumed he was waiting for someone else's table. In bank offices where people smiled too hard before asking for one more form of ID. At conferences where men with smaller companies interrupted him, then blinked when the room turned toward him for the keynote. No one had to say the ugly part out loud. They only had to keep asking him to prove what had already been confirmed. Nora Keene stood frozen beside him, tablet in hand, her eyes lowered toward a truth she no longer wanted to touch. The blue letters on her screen had already answered everything. Darius Whitmore, 1C. Claudia Bellamy, 2D. Yet Claudia's bag remained in his seat, and Nora's body remained angled toward Darius as though he were the one blocking the aisle. Darius thought of his father then, Samuel Whitmore, who had driven buses through Halifax winters for 28 years, hands cracked from cold, uniform always pressed, shoes always shined before sunrise. Samuel had been a quiet man, but not a weak one. When Darius was younger and came home furious from rooms that made him feel invisible, his father would listen, let the anger burn down, then say the same thing. "Son, never give them the anger they came looking for. Give them the truth they can't walk around." Darius carried out that sentence the way some men carried a family ring. He straightened his shoulders. Not dramatically, just enough. "Miss Bellamy," he said, "the app did not confuse me. The boarding pass did not confuse me. The seat number above your bag did not confuse me." Claudia's eyes narrowed. A faint pink climbed her neck, almost hidden by the blue scarf. "You are being needlessly difficult." "No," Darius said. "I am being accurate." Across the aisle, June Calloway lowered her magazine until it rested flat against her lap. She was 64. A retired teacher from Victoria with silver hair pinned back and reading glasses hanging from a thin chain. She had spent most of her life listening for what people meant when they did not want to be heard plainly. She saw the boarding pass. She saw Nora hesitate. She heard Claudia say premium cabins as if the words had a gate around them. June's mouth tightened, not with shock, but recognition. She had watched enough unfairness in polite clothing to know when a person was being pushed out without anyone touching him. In row 3, Ethan Reed looked up from his phone. He was 20, traveling alone, a black college student in a navy hoodie under a winter jacket, one backpack tucked under the seat in front of him. His thumb hovered over the camera icon, then stopped. He looked at Darius, at the calm jaw, the steady hands, the way the whole cabin seemed to ask him to shrink so everyone else could feel comfortable again. Ethan felt something unpleasant open in his chest. It was not only sympathy. It was warning. He imagined a future version of himself with a ticket, a degree, and a hard-earned right in his pocket, still being asked whether he had wandered into the wrong place. His thumb trembled once. He did not press record, not yet. Claudia leaned closer to Nora, her voice dropping just enough to pretend privacy while still feeding the first row. "People should be grateful when they're offered help." The sentence floated into the cabin and changed the temperature. Help! That was the word she chose. Not pressure, not removal, not surrender. Help! Darius looked at her for a long moment. Something moved behind his eyes. Not anger, not pain exactly, but an old disappointment sharpened by discipline. Help would be moving your bag, he said. Claudia's lips parted, then closed. Nora shifted her weight, trapped between what was true and what she wished would become quiet. June finally spoke, her voice low but clear. He has the seat. Nora looked at her, startled. Claudia turned as if slapped by the interruption. Ethan's thumb found the camera icon again. This time he did not look away. Darius was not only defending a seat, he was defending the right to stop proving he belonged in rooms he had already paid to enter. Victor Sloan arrived with the controlled stride of a man who believed every room became smaller once he entered it. He wore a black MapleGate vest, a silver name pin, and the smooth expression of someone who had spent years turning conflict into paperwork. He did not hurry. Victor understood the theater of authority. Nora Keene leaned toward him near the front row, her voice low but not low enough. Passenger in 1C is refusing a seating adjustment. Darius Whitmore heard it clearly. So did June Calloway. So did Ethan Reed, whose phone now rested in his hand with the screen dark but ready. The sentence did not describe what happened. It replaced what happened. A woman blocking another man's assigned seat disappeared from the story. A confirmed boarding pass disappeared. Claudia's cream handbag disappeared. What remained was a black passenger refusing something reasonable. Darius turned his head toward Nora. That is not what happened. Victor looked at him then, really looked, but not with curiosity. His eyes moved over Darius's coat, worn leather case, calm face, and the boarding pass still held between two fingers. The calm bothered him. Loud passengers were easier to file under disruption. Calm made him work harder. Mr. Victor glanced at the pass. Whitmore, I'm Victor Sloan, cabin service manager. I understand there's been some difficulty. There is no difficulty with the seat, Darius said. There is a passenger blocking it who is not assigned to it. Claudia gave a wounded little breath, perfectly timed. I have never been spoken about like luggage. June's eyes narrowed over the top of her glasses. Darius did not look at Claudia. Your bag is in my seat. You are beside it. That is not a metaphor. A small sound moved through the cabin. Not laughter. Something tighter. Recognition, maybe. Victor lifted one hand as if pressing the air down. Let's keep this respectful. Respectful would have been asking Mrs. Bellamy to move when your crew confirmed her seat, Darius said. Victor's jaw flexed. I'll need to verify the assignments myself. Darius handed over his pass. Victor scanned it. The device blinked. He then asked Claudia for hers. Claudia opened her phone with sharp, impatient fingers and held it up without letting go, as if even the screen needed protection from Darius. Victor read it. His mouth tightened by a fraction. Darius Whitmore, 1C. Claudia A. Bellamy, 2D. Plain. Clean. Undramatic. The kind of truth people ruin themselves trying to step around. Victor returned Darius's pass, but he did not return the seat with it. Mr. Whitmore, he said, voice polished now, for an on-time departure, I'm asking for your cooperation. Darius looked at him for a long second. The cabin felt smaller. Even the engines outside seemed to hum more softly. You confirmed this is my seat? Victor blinked once. Yes. You confirmed Mrs. Bellamy is assigned to 2D? Yes. Then your solution is to move me. No one breathed for a moment. Claudia stared toward the window, but her fingers tightened around the strap of her handbag. Nora looked down at the tablet as if it had become heavy. Ethan raised his phone a few inches. Not hiding now, not fully. Victor's smile thinned. My solution is to prevent a delay and keep the boarding process moving. By rewarding the person who caused the delay, Darius said. Victor's eyes hardened. Sir, I need you to be careful. If a crew member gives a direction and a passenger refuses, that can be documented as failure to follow crew direction. The words slid through the cabin like cold water under a door. Failure to follow crew direction. A label with teeth. It did not care who had the ticket. It did not care who had taken the seat. It only needed a uniform to speak first. June Calloway set her magazine aside. Her hands were still, but her voice carried. He has been calmer than everyone standing over him. Victor turned toward her. Mom, Please allow us to handle this. I am watching you handle it, June said. That is why I spoke. The cabin changed then. Not loudly, no one stood, no one clapped, but the story no longer belonged only to the crew. Claudia felt it and hated it. Nora felt it and looked ashamed. Ethan felt it and touched the red record button. Darius remained where he was, centered in the aisle with a valid ticket and no raised voice, while the people around him worked harder and harder to make the truth look complicated. Victor did not need the facts to change. He only needed the label to change. Once Darius became non-compliant, the seat no longer mattered. Victor Sloan lowered his voice, and somehow that made the cabin feel less safe, not more. Loud authority gave people something to resist. Quiet authority worked like a hand placed gently on the back of the neck. "Mr. Whitmore," he said, each word smooth enough for a training manual, "you are affecting the boarding flow. We have passengers trying to get to Toronto. We have a departure window. Everyone here wants this resolved quickly." Darius Whitmore looked past him, down the narrow aisle of MapleGate Flight 417. Everyone had heard the seat numbers. Everyone had seen Claudia Bellamy's phone. Everyone had watched Nora Keene's face change when the truth appeared on her scanner. Yet most eyes dropped when Darius looked their way. A man adjusted his cuff for no reason. A woman tapped a blank tablet screen. Someone behind row 2 cleared his throat, then went silent. The cabin had enough witnesses to know the truth, but not enough courage yet to protect it. Claudia sensed the weakness and stepped into it. She placed one hand against her chest, her diamond ring flashing under the cabin light, and let her breath tremble just enough to be useful. "I'm honestly uncomfortable with him standing over me like this," she said. The sentence changed nothing and threatened everything. She did not say Darius had touched her. He had not. She did not say he had shouted. He had not. She did not say he had blocked her from leaving. He was the one blocked from sitting down. But discomfort, spoken by the right person in the right cabin, could become a tool sharper than fact. Nora's face went pale. She knew what Claudia was doing. Worse, she knew how easily the word could travel upward through reports and arrive scrubbed clean of its cause. Darius turned to Claudia, then to Victor. "I am standing here because my seat is being occupied," he said. "If that makes people uncomfortable, maybe they should look at why." Victor's head snapped slightly, not much, just enough to show the sentence had landed. "Sir, lower your tone." June Calloway answered before Darius could. His tone did not change. The words cut across the aisle with the steadiness of a woman who had spent decades recognizing unfairness before it learned new vocabulary. Victor looked at her, irritation flashing through his controlled face. "Mom, I'm going to ask you not to interfere." "I'm not interfering," June said. "I'm listening carefully." Ethan Reed's thumb pressed the red button. This time he did not pretend to check a message. His phone rose above his lap, angled toward the first row. The screen caught Darius standing with both hands visible, one still holding the boarding pass, the other resting open beside his coat. It caught Claudia beside the first row, her handbag still in 1C. It caught Victor standing close enough to crowd the aisle while telling the calm man to lower his tone. It caught Nora looking like someone watching a bridge collapse after seeing the first crack. Ethan's heart beat hard, not from excitement, from recognition. The camera felt heavier than his phone should have felt. It was evidence now. It was memory with a battery. Victor shifted his tablet against his hip, trying to turn his body away from the lens. Too late. For half a second, the screen faced Ethan's phone. A line of text sat in the incident field, guest refusing relocation. No mention of Claudia's handbag blocking 1C. No mention of Darius's confirmed ticket. No mention of Nora verifying both assignments. Just 4 words clean enough to damage him. Ethan's eyes widened. He zoomed in without thinking. Victor saw the movement and lowered the tablet. "Sir," he said to Ethan, "recording crew operations is not helpful." Ethan's voice came out quieter than he expected, but it held. "Then make the record accurate." A small murmur moved through the cabin. Nora closed her eyes for one brief second. Claudia turned sharply toward Ethan, her polished calm cracking. "Are you filming me?" Ethan did not lower the phone. "I'm filming what's happening." Claudia's mouth tightened. The room had started slipping away from her. and she reached for the strongest phrase she knew how to use without proof. "I don't feel safe." Nora's face drained. Victor went still. Even Claudia seemed to understand the weight of what she had released, but pride kept her from taking it back. Darius stood there unchanged, yet the air around him changed. He had done nothing new, said nothing louder, moved no closer. Darius looked at Victor's tablet, at Claudia's hand still pressed to her chest, at Nora's fear, at Ethan's camera, at June's steady face. The machine was no longer hidden. It had wheels, labels, uniforms, and a language polished enough to pass for procedure. Darius understood it now. First they questioned his place. Then they questioned his attitude. Now they were preparing to question his safety. Captain Adrian Cole stepped out of the cockpit as if the aircraft itself had sent a verdict. The curtain near the forward galley moved first. Then his shoulder appeared. Then the 4 gold stripes on his sleeve caught the cabin light. He was 55. Broad through the chest, gray at the temples, with the hard stillness of a man used to people quieting before he explained himself. The first rows went silent at once. Even Claudia Bellamy went still. Captains changed the temperature of a cabin. Adrian Cole knew that. He used it. Victor Sloan moved toward him before anyone else could speak, tablet tucked against his side, face arranged into official concern. "Captain, we have a passenger in 1C refusing relocation. Boarding flow is being affected, and we may lose our departure window." Darius Whitmore heard every word. Relocation, boarding flow, departure window, clean phrases, useful phrases, phrases with the blood wiped off. Claudia added quickly, one hand still pressed to her chest, "He has been making this uncomfortable for everyone." Nora Keene stood beside Victor, eyes lowered, lips pressed together. She looked like a woman holding the truth under her tongue and discovering it was too heavy to swallow. Captain Cole looked at Darius last, not first. Last, that told Darius enough. The captain's eyes moved over his coat, his boarding pass, his still hands, then settled on his face with the tired suspicion of someone who had already been given a version he preferred. "Mr. Whitmore," Cole said, "I'm Captain Adrian Cole. I understand there's been an issue." Darius answered before Victor could reshape the room again. "Captain, I have seat 1C. Mrs. Bellamy has seat 2D. Your crew confirmed both. I have not threatened anyone. I have not touched anyone. I have not raised my voice. I asked to sit in the seat I paid for." He said it without heat. Each sentence landed by itself. Not a speech, a record. Ethan Reed's phone stayed up, catching Darius's open hands, Claudia's bag still occupying the seat, Nora's face tightening with each fact. June Calloway sat upright across the aisle, her magazine forgotten in her lap. Captain Cole glanced toward Nora. "Is his seat 1C?" Nora's throat moved. Victor's eyes shifted toward her, warning without words. Claudia stared at the window as though glass could save her from the answer. Nora's voice came small, but it carried. "Yes, Captain, his seat is 1C. Cole's jaw moved once. And Mrs. Bellamy?" Nora took one breath. "She is assigned to 2D. There it was again. The truth, plain and inconvenient, waiting for one person in authority to honor it." Claudia's fingers clenched around her handbag strap. Victor's face tightened. Captain Cole looked at the delayed aisle, Ethan's phone, June's steady eyes, and Claudia's polished distress. Then he checked his watch. That small movement told the whole story. Darius saw the decision form before the captain spoke, not because the facts were unclear, because the facts were clear, and Cole was choosing what cost him less in the next 10 minutes. "Mr. Whitmore," the captain said, "I'm asking you one final time to accept the alternate seat so we can depart." June inhaled sharply. Nora's face went pale. Ethan's phone lifted another inch. Darius looked at Captain Cole with a calm so deep it made the captain's authority feel suddenly loud and thin. "Let me understand you clearly," Darius said. "You confirmed this is my assigned seat." Cole's expression hardened. "Yes, you confirmed Mrs. Bellamy is assigned elsewhere." "Yes. Are you officially instructing me to leave my confirmed seat because another passenger prefers it?" The cabin seemed to stop around the question. Even the soft hum of the aircraft felt distant. Captain Cole did not answer it. That was his answer. Instead, he straightened his shoulders and reached for the safer language, the language that turned unfairness into order. "I am giving a crew instruction." Victor looked relieved. Claudia's mouth curved for half a second too soon. Darius nodded once slowly, as if marking the sentence in a place no one could erase. A crew instruction to do what? Cole's eyes sharpened. To take the alternate seat and allow this flight to depart. The seat assigned to Mrs. Bellamy, Darius said. Cole's silence tightened. Nora looked down. June said softly, "He is asking the right question." Cole ignored her. The captain's voice dropped. "Mr. Whitmore, refusal to follow crew instruction may result in airport security being called to remove you from the aircraft." Remove. The word passed through signature class like cold air from an open door. Claudia looked toward Darius now, not triumphant exactly, but expectant, as if waiting for him to finally become the person she had needed him to be from the beginning. Angry, loud, easy to dismiss. Darius did not give her that gift. He looked at Cole, then at Victor, then at Nora, then at the cream handbag still sitting where his body should have been. "For asking to sit in my seat," he said. Cole did not reply. He did not need to. The captain had confirmed the truth and chosen against it. That was the moment the cabin stopped watching a dispute and started witnessing a failure. Darius Whitmore reached into his coat slowly, not the way Victor Sloan expected from a man being threatened with removal. His hand came out with his phone, fingers steady around the edges. That steadiness bothered Captain Adrian Cole more than anger would have. Angry passengers rushed. They talked over people. They threw out lawsuits like loose coins. Darius did none of that. He moved like a man opening a file, not starting a fight. Victor stepped half a pace forward. "What are you doing?" Darius glanced at him, then at the cream handbag still sitting in 1C, then at Captain Cole. "Creating a record." The words were quiet, but they changed the room. Ethan Reed's phone stayed raised. June Calloway sat straighter. Nora Keene looked at Darius's screen before she could stop herself, and her stomach tightened at the name glowing there. Maya Laurent. Under it, the preview from a message she had sent minutes earlier. "MapleGate board is waiting. Final contract review begins at 1:30. Nora did not understand the full meaning yet, but she understood enough to feel the floor tilt. Darius tapped Maya's name. The call connected on the first ring. "Darius," Maya said, crisp and alert. "Are you on board?" "I'm on board," he said. "There's a situation." Maya had worked beside Darius long enough to know the weight of his calm. "Tell me." Darius kept his eyes on Captain Cole. "MapleGate Flight 41 Calgary to Toronto, signature class, seat 1C. Another passenger is blocking my assigned seat with her bag. Crew confirmed my boarding pass is valid. Crew confirmed hers is 2D. They are still asking me to move. My refusal is being framed as failure to follow crew direction." His words came clean, exact, almost cold. No extra emotion, no wasted detail. Victor's throat moved. Claudia Bellamy's face stiffened, but she tried to smile, as if this were another performance she could outlast. Captain Cole looked from Darius to the phone with the first flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. The airline name, spoken like evidence, sounded different now. Not like a complaint, like testimony. "Are you safe?" Maya asked. Darius looked briefly at Claudia, then at Victor. "I am being described as unsafe." A pause. Short, hard, then Maya said, "Put me on speaker." Darius tapped the screen. Her voice filled the signature class cabin. "This is Maya Laurent, Chief Operating Officer of Civic Line Technologies. Who is the senior MapleGate representative present?" Victor's face lost color around the mouth. Captain Cole straightened. "Captain Adrian Cole." "Captain Cole," Maya said, "Darius Whitmore is the founder and chief executive officer of Civic Line Technologies. MapleGate Airways is currently in final review for a 70 million Canadian dollars service modernization contract with our company." The cabin went dead silent. Not polite silent, impact silent. Claudia blinked once, then again. Her hand slid off her scarf and froze mid-air. Nora's tablet lowered slowly, as if it had become too heavy to hold. Victor's polished authority cracked at the edges. Captain Cole looked at Darius the way people look at something they had misread from across a room, only to discover it was never small. Maya continued, her voice steady enough to make everyone else sound guilty without saying the word. "That contract includes passenger complaint modernization, service escalation review, and bias detection across customer-facing operations. In plain terms, Captain, the exact failure our system is designed to identify appears to be happening on your aircraft." Ethan's camera held the moment. June's eyes moved from the phone to Claudia, not with satisfaction, but with sorrow. Claudia finally looked at Darius fully. Not at his coat, not at his shoes, at him. Too late. Before this proceeds, Maya said, I need one clear answer. Did your crew confirm Mr. Whitmore is assigned to seat 1C? Captain Cole's jaw tightened. Yes. Did your crew confirm Mrs. Bellamy is assigned to seat 2D? Another pause. Yes. Then why is Mr. Whitmore being asked to move? No one answered. The question hung over the first row, over the handbag, over Nora's false note, over Victor's careful language, over Claudia's practiced discomfort, over Captain Cole's decision to make convenience look like command. The silence answered before anyone in uniform could. Flight 417 did not push back. The jet bridge stayed attached to the aircraft like a hand holding a door open, and that single fact changed the sound of the cabin. The engine still hummed low outside the windows. The overhead bins still sat closed. The cream leather seats still looked expensive and calm. But the cabin no longer felt private. It felt exposed. Somewhere beyond the cockpit, MapleGate ground operations had heard enough to stop pretending this was a seating inconvenience. A confirmed ticket, witnesses, video, a contract partner on speaker. 3 things an airline could not smooth over with points and a careful apology. Captain Adrian Cole stood near the forward galley with the stiff face of a man waiting for instructions he hated needing. Victor Sloan held his tablet close to his body, no longer like a tool, more like evidence. Nora Keene stared at the floor. Claudia Bellamy stood rigid beside her cream handbag, her face pale beneath the polished makeup, still trying to look offended instead of afraid. Darius Whitmore remained in the aisle, phone lowered now after Maya told him legal would preserve the record. He had not raised his voice. He had not moved closer to anyone. Yet every person who had pressured him minutes earlier now looked as if he had become the danger they had invented. The cabin door opened wider, and Amélie Girard stepped inside. She was 51, with dark hair pulled back, a charcoal coat over her MapleGate blazer, and a tablet tucked under one arm. Her face carried no panic. That made the crew panic more. She did not rush, smile for Claudia, or ask who was uncomfortable. She looked first at the row marker, then at the handbag in seat 1C, then at Darius's boarding pass. I'm Amélie Girard, Ground Operations Manager, she said. Her voice was calm, but it had edges. This aircraft will remain at the gate until I understand exactly what happened. Claudia leaned forward immediately. Finally, someone reasonable. Amélie did not look at her. Mrs. Bellamy, I'll speak with you after I review the records. Claudia's mouth opened, then closed. It was the first time that morning someone in authority had not accepted her performance as the center of the room. Amélie turned to Nora, confirmed seat assignments. Nora swallowed. Her hands trembled around her scanner. Mr. Whitmore is assigned to 1C. Mrs. Bellamy is assigned to 2D. When did you know that? Amélie asked. Nora's eyes lifted, then fell again, before Mr. Sloan came over. The words landed quietly and did damage. Victor's jaw tightened. Amélie turned to him. Show me the initial incident note. Victor hesitated. It was preliminary. Show me. He unlocked the tablet and handed it over. Amélie read the line, guest refusing relocation. Her expression did not change, which somehow made her disappointment worse. Why does this say guest refusing relocation instead of assigned passenger displaced by another guest? Victor blinked. We were trying to resolve the matter quickly. That is not an answer. The cabin went still. Ethan Reed held his phone in both hands now, no longer pretending he was only checking messages. Amélie glanced at him. Do you have video? Ethan looked at Darius first, asking without words. Darius gave a small nod. Ethan stepped forward just enough to hold up the phone. Yes, Mum. From before the captain came out. Ethan played it on his phone, angling the screen so Amélie could see clearly. Darius standing still. Claudia's bag in 1C. Nora verifying the passes. Victor saying boarding flow. Claudia saying she did not feel safe. Darius's tone low the entire time. Victor asking him to lower it anyway. No threat, no touch, no shouting. Just a man with a correct ticket being moved farther and farther away from the truth. Amélie handed the phone back. Thank you. Claudia seized the pause. I have flown this route for 15 years every month. MapleGate has always taken care of me. Amelie finally turned toward her. Loyalty gives you service. It does not give you another person's seat. The sentence cut through the cabin cleanly. Claudia's face tightened as if the words had physically struck her. Nora drew in a shaking breath. "I knew she was in the wrong seat," she said, barely above a whisper. "I thought if he moved, it would be easier. I was worried about a complaint from a premium guest." No one spoke. That was the system, stripped bare. Not one villain. Not one bad sentence. A habit. A fear. A quiet rule everyone understood without writing it down. Comfort the powerful first, then ask the person with less protection to be reasonable. Darius looked at Nora, not with triumph, with something heavier. "Reasonable," he said softly, "should never mean invisible." Amelie closed Victor's tablet. "This report will be corrected. The video will be preserved. Passenger records, crew notes, gate audio, and cabin service communications will be locked for review." Victor looked as though he wanted to protest, but no clean sentence came to him. For the first time that morning, the airline stopped asking Darius to move and started asking itself why everyone else had moved around the truth. Amélie Girard did not raise her voice. She did not need to. The cabin had heard enough raised authority for one morning. She stood beside row 1, Victor Sloane's tablet tucked under her arm, Ethan Reed having agreed to send the raw video through a secure MapleGate evidence link, Nora Keene's admission still hanging in the air like a confession nobody knew how to carry. Then Amelie looked at Claudia Bellamy. "Mrs. Bellamy," she said, "please collect your belongings and move to your assigned seat, 2D. Claudia stared at her as if the words had arrived in the wrong language. Her hand stayed locked around the handbag strap. She looked toward Captain Cole, then Victor, then Nora, waiting for rescue. No one gave it. Claudia stood slowly. The movement seemed to cost her more than the seat ever had. Her face flushed red beneath the careful makeup. She lifted the handbag from 1C with both hands, no longer using it as a flag, only carrying it like evidence she wished could disappear. No one clapped, no one laughed. That made it worse. Applause would have turned the moment into a show. The silence made it a mirror. She stepped past Darius Whitmore without looking at him and lowered herself into 2D, the seat she had owned from the beginning and treated like an insult. Amelie turned to Victor. "Mr. Sloane, you are relieved from cabin duty for this flight. You'll return to the gate with me and provide a full written account." Victor's mouth opened, but no answer survived the look on her face. "Miss Keene," Amelie said, softer but not gentler, "you'll be replaced in signature class and interviewed by ground operations." Nora nodded once. Her chin trembled. "Yes, Mom." Captain Cole shifted his weight near the galley. Amelie looked at him last. "Captain, operations will request an explanatory report before departure approval. Your report should address why removal was threatened after verified seat assignments were confirmed." The words struck harder than blame because they were exact. Captain Cole's face tightened. His uniform still held its shape, but the authority inside it had thinned. MapleGate sent a replacement forward cabin attendant up the jet bridge. Another operations supervisor followed with a sealed folder and a face trained not to react. The delay posted on the monitors outside the gate climbed to 50 minutes. Inside the cabin, nobody complained. Not openly. The passengers had watched time become less important than truth, and even the impatient ones seemed to understand they were sitting inside a correction, not an inconvenience. Amelie turned back to Darius. "Mr. Whitmore, we can keep you in 1C, or we can place you on the next Toronto flight with private boarding." Darius looked at the empty seat. Cream leather, folded blanket, a small bottle of water still untouched beside the tray. The seat looked ordinary again, almost too ordinary for the damage gathered around it. "I'll stay," he said. "I don't need a better seat. I need the record corrected." Amelie nodded. Something like respect moved through her face. "It will be." Claudia's voice came from 2D smaller now. "Mr. Whitmore." He turned his head slightly. She swallowed. "I didn't know you were important." The sentence landed poorly. Even Claudia heard it after she said it. Darius studied her for a moment, not cruelly, not kindly either. "That is exactly the problem." Claudia looked down at her hands. No one had stripped her dignity away. They had only stopped protecting her entitlement. Ethan stepped closer after Amelie moved away. His phone was down now, both hands around it. "Mr. Whitmore," he said, uneasy, "I posted part of the video before they stopped the plane. I didn't know it would spread." Darius looked at him, at the worry in his young face, at the way responsibility had arrived faster than confidence. "Then make sure the truth stays whole," he said. "Don't turn people into monsters. Show what the system allowed." Ethan nodded slowly. He understood the difference. A villain could be dismissed. A system had to be repaired. Darius finally stepped into row 1 and sat in 1C. The cabin did not exhale all at once. It settled, piece by piece, like a room after a storm has passed but left water under the door. Seat 1C was empty for a moment, but it no longer looked like a seat. It looked like evidence. Darius Whitmore reached Toronto late, but not defeated. Snow moved in thin silver lines beyond the glass at Pearson. The 50-minute delay followed him in lowered voices, sideways looks, and passengers who no longer knew what to say. Ethan Reed stood a few yards back, phone in both hands, reading comments he no longer seemed ready for. He had last seen Nora Keene back in Calgary, walking into the jet bridge with a supervisor beside her, eyes red, uniform still neat, face no longer protected by the smile she had worn at boarding. He carried all of it and kept walking. The meeting with MapleGate did not look like the polished presentation they had planned. No glossy opening slide, no market growth jokes, no polite talk about Calgary weather. A glass-walled conference room inside MapleGate's Pearson operations office waited for him, too bright and too quiet, with senior leaders seated around a long table as if they had been called into court. Maya Laurent sat to Darius's right, laptop open, jaw set. Amélie Girard joined by video from Calgary operations. Legal counsel sat near the far end, quiet and pale. Darius placed his laptop case on the floor and remained standing. "I won't cancel the contract today," he said. Nobody relaxed. They knew enough now to fear mercy more than anger. But the terms for continuing this contract changed today. The board chair, a careful man named Peter Lang, folded his hands. "We understand this morning was unacceptable." Darius looked at him. Unacceptable is what companies say when they want pain to sound temporary. This was not temporary. This was a system doing what it had learned to do. Maya clicked a file open. Seat scan. Crew note. Gate audio timestamp. Passenger video. Nora's amended statement. Victor's original report. Each item appeared on the screen without music, without drama, and still the room felt the weight. Darius named the new conditions one by one. First, confirmed tickets would control seat disputes before status, habit, appearance, age, loyalty tier, or personal preference entered the conversation. Second, no report could label a passenger non-compliant without recording what happened before the refusal. A person's resistance could not be separated from the pressure that caused it. Third, every frontline employee would complete Dignity-First service training, not as a slide deck to click through, but as supervised scenario work with outside review. Fourth, MapleGate would issue a public apology to him, to the passengers on Flight 417, and to the wider public, naming the failure without hiding behind the word misunderstanding. Peter Lang started to speak, then stopped. Darius had not shouted. That made it harder to dismiss him. Later, outside the meeting room, Nora asked for a minute. She stood near a row of windows, hands clasped in front of her. "I knew you were right," she said. "I was scared of the complaint, of Victor, of losing my job." Darius listened. Snow gathered along the edge of the glass. "Fear explains silence," he said. "It does not excuse it." Nora nodded as if the words hurt because they deserved to. He did not comfort her. He did not punish her either. Some lessons needed room to stay sharp. His phone buzzed as he turned toward the terminal. A message from Ethan. "I used to think staying quiet kept you safe. Today I learned calm is not surrender." Darius read it twice. For the first time that day his expression softened. Not into victory, into recognition. Outside, a MapleGate aircraft lifted from the runway into the gray Canadian afternoon, its red maple emblem fading through snow and cloud. Darius stood before the glass and watched it climb. He did not smile like a man who had won. He only stood a little straighter, a little lighter, because this time the truth did not get moved to another seat. If Seat 1C made you think twice about dignity and fairness, hit like and subscribe for more stories like this. Which moment hit you the hardest, And where are you watching from today? Tell us in the comments.